All right, so we're gonna take a walk through the brain dissection lab here. You need both a half brain and a full brain when you go through this, but we'll first go through the full brain. What I'm gonna have you do is eventually, I'll kind of talk through some of the stuff on here, and then there's gonna be a picture of it. You need to label that picture with the stuff that is on the lab sheet and obviously answer the questions, and that's what you'll be doing for this lab. But this is a sheep brain, and so when you're looking at the sheep brain, for the full brain, the stuff that you need to see is really you need to point out the lobes. And so when you're looking at the lobes, you're looking at the cerebrum. And so I'll give you multiple angles of this in order to point out the frontal lobe, the temporal, the occipital, and the parietal lobes on the brain, which you should already know that part. But this part of the brain right here and all the way here, this is the cerebrum. That would be that longitudinal fissure, which is separating the hemispheres of the brain. Back here, this knob that you're seeing, that is the cerebellum. And then you have your brainstem back here. When we're looking at this brain, also other things that you need to label that you probably haven't seen yet on here are some of the cranial nerves. It talks about that on the front of the lab, but one thing you have to do is olfactory bulbs, which are these things on the top, and then the optic chiasm, which is this, it looks like an X right here, that optic chiasm that we're gonna see on there. Otherwise, you also need to point out the pons, the medulla, on the spinal cord, and that would be by bumps that you're seeing on the brainstem, that we talked about in class. Okay, so I'll give you a picture of this in multiple angles to label all that stuff that is found under number 4C, just C, on your lab. Okay, the next one that I'm gonna give you is I'm gonna give you a half brain shot. So we cut these down that longitudinal fissures so we can see one half of this hemisphere of the brain. And now we're looking on the inside of the brain. The big things to kind of point off for just giving you your bearings on stuff in order to label all the things that you have to on there, is that you can kind of see this little white swoosh part. That's your corpus callosum. Underneath that, there's that hole. That's a ventricle. From there, you should be able to label everything on there. I'll make sure I pick a really good half of a brain in order for you to label those things on there. Otherwise, I mean, you should be able to, from that picture, label everything in the half brain based off of the brain caps that you've already done. Then you need to go on, after you did your pre-lab, there are post-lab questions. There's links to that on Schoology, and that's all you need to do for that brain lab.